You are wrong if you think that paying 35 years worth of national insurance will guarantee you the full state pension. Tens of thousands of people every single year are discovering that they're not going to be getting as much as they thought when it comes to their state pension. And believe it or not, most of them, they have no idea why this is happening. But the funny part is, it's actually because of a government scheme that they might not have even known that they were actually taking part in. The scheme was called contracting out. And if you don't check your state pension records soon, it might end up costing you thousands and thousands in your retirement. This might seem like a lot, and frankly, it is, but don't worry, because in this video, I'm going to cover exactly what contracting out was, who it might have applied to, and most importantly, what these people can do if this is happening to them, and how they can get back on track and get the full state pension entitlement. So with that, my name's Ross Kelly. I'm a diploma holder in regulated financial planning, and in this channel, we're just trying to make sure that your finances are exactly how you want them to be. Be sure to subscribe, turn notifications on, and let's get into why you might be getting screwed out your full state pension. So starting off, one of the most common assumptions that I hear is, well, I've paid my 35 years worth of national insurance. Surely that means I'm entitled to, well, the full state pension. That's what they say it is. And you would think so, but in actuality, millions of people, actually it's estimated to be over 10 million at this point, are going to come to the conclusion that that isn't necessarily the case. A lot of workers assume that 35 years of national insurance contributions is all they need. But thanks to contracting out, a scheme that was done decades ago at this point, a lot of them are realising that the 35 years might not be enough. So I've mentioned contracting out a couple times now. Before we get into specifically what that was, just a quick rundown of the history of the state pension, or at least in recent history. The current new state pension, which is the one implemented after April 2016, is a one-level system. So there's just one state pension, and that's the same that everyone gets. And you get that by qualifying for 35 years of national insurance payments. Pretty straightforward. However, before that, the state pension was actually made up of two components. That was the basic state pension, and then the additional state pension as well. This additional state pension, it was also known as SERPs, but a bit later on it also was changed to S2P, is what you might have also heard it called. And it's that additional pension that's really going to end up causing problem for people, as there was schemes, and mainly in the 80s and 90s, that you could contract out of your additional state pension and not pay into it as a result. And obviously, contracting out of a part of your national insurance payments lowers your entitlement to the state pension. And believe it or not, this was heavily promoted by the government alongside pension providers and even workplace pension schemes. Why exactly would people want to do this? Well, when you contract out and you stop making these payments to the additional state pension, it basically, well, first off, lowers your national insurance payments, so that's a nice bill lowered, but also the money that's saved, the money that you're not paying into this additional state pension, is redirected and was normally put into your workplace pension scheme or a private pension instead of going into the state pension. Now, you might understand why workplaces and definitely pension providers would promote this, but why would the government exactly want this to happen? Well, if more people are invested into personal pensions and they are more self-sufficient in their retirement as a result, then they're less likely to be relying on the state and the state pension. And them getting lower state pension payments obviously lowers that bill for the government, which is, at the moment, a fairly massive bill. It does make sense, and I'm definitely all for self-empowerment and that type of thing. The ability for your own pension to be enough to get you through the remainder of your life and retirement, instead of being reliant on the state pension and its unknowable future. But like a lot of things on paper, it's not exactly panned out the way that they would think. One of the big problems that reared its head in this scheme was that the pension providers would do a forecast of the money you would expect to have in your pension by making this sacrifice, by contracting out. But in these figures, they were using return expectations of sometimes up to 13% per year, which is bananas, for the record. And by the 1990s, millions upon millions of workers were automatically just contracted out, and a lot of just workplace pension schemes automatically contracted you out as well. So you might have just walked into a job assuming that you were making your full national insurance contributions. But in reality, that wasn't the case. As what was actually happening was at the very bottom in small print on your employer's contract. And little did you know, you weren't making your full contributions, and therefore your entitlement to the state pension was not actually going up as much as you thought it was. But coming out of the 90s, we fast forward to 2016 and they simplify the whole state pension. It's rolled into just one level. There's no additional state pension to be contracted out. There's just one level of the state pension, and you just need to make your national insurance contributions for 35 years. And at that point, you've got your full state pension. So how exactly does this become a problem for people who contracted out in the 80s and 90s? Well, it's became a problem because when this was merged into the one system and it looks back to all your previous contributions, it's not giving you any roundups for the contracting out. If you didn't make that amount that you needed to for your national insurance, then you've not gained any of the entitlement all the way back when in the 80s and 90s when you were contributing or when you thought you were contributing. So even if you have made 35 years worth of national insurance contributions, even if you think that you should be getting the max state pension as a result, that might not actually be the case. So you might be thinking there, worrying now, thinking, oh, did my employer back then have me contracted out and I don't know about it? Well, if there's one thing you can take away from this video, is that you should really go on and check your state pension forecast. And thankfully, this can be done online on the government website. You simply just need to go onto the .gov website, fill in your details, log in, and then you can actually go into your state pension forecast, and it'll let you know if you currently have the full entitlement, and if not, how long it'll be before you get the full entitlement. And don't worry, for the more analog among you, there's also a paper form option that you can also fill out and send away to then get the forecast as well. Now, when you go into the forecast, you might see at the bottom, or I'm not actually sure exactly where it is, but somewhere in the forecast, it might say the letters COPE, or contracted out pension equivalent. If you can see that number there, then that means you were contracted out at some point in your working career. So it's not some sort of deductions coming out of your state pension. It's basically showing you how much of your national insurance contributions that you gave up, that you put into the contracted out schemes instead of towards your national insurance contributions. And as mentioned earlier, these forecasts for the contracted out pension schemes had projections of 13% returns per year. So when you go to check these pension schemes and the numbers that you have now, it's likely going to be, especially if it was at 13% per year, the amount that you're projected to have is likely lower than what you actually have now. So you combine that with also having a lower expected state pension, well, you're being squeezed from both sides as a result of this, so no bueno. But with that, there is some good news, as there is steps you can take to basically buy back more years of entitlement if you're missing some bits in your record. And that goes for people who might not have even been working in the last couple of years as well. You can still get some of your entitlement back. So if your forecast is lower than expected and you've got some missing years, specifically within the last 6, then it might be worthwhile looking into investing and buying back some of that entitlement, which can be done through the Class 3 voluntary contributions. Now, this changed in April this year. It used to be you could go further back to buy back some of your entitlement, but as of post-April 2025, you can now only go back 6 years in your NI record to make some voluntary contributions. So if you've not been working in the past 6 years, or you've not made the full national insurance contribution requirements in the past 6 years, which can be checked on the government website, you're able to make a voluntary contribution, which will then give you that stamp and give you another year's worth of entitlement for the state pension. Assuming you paid no national insurance this year, it costs £934 to get a full year's worth of entitlement. And if you've paid some amount in the year, then it would be less as well. It's worth pointing out that that £900 contribution will mean about a bit over £300 a year more in your state pension. So if you claim the state pension, all you need to do is survive 3 years, and then at that point you've made your money back. And it's not just that £300, it's also under the triple lock mechanism. So that, in terms of a safe return, you're not really going to get any better than that, because after the 3 years, it's pure profit and it's inflation protected, and arguably better than inflation protected, depending on how earnings in that go that year. Having 35 years worth of contributions doesn't guarantee you your full state pension, especially if you were contracted out in the 80s, 90s, or maybe even after. So please make sure you do go on and check on the government website your state pension forecast if you're considering wanting to take it out. It's quick, easy, and I'll leave a link to the website in the description as well, so that you can easily get onto the website yourself. And if you found this video helpful, please do drop a like. It really does help the channel out, and maybe share it to someone who you might think needs to see this, as it's sneaking up on a lot of people. Did you know that, as well as all this stuff about the state pension, you might be able to pass it on to your spouse after you die? This video here goes into more detail about it, so if that sounds interesting, I'll see you over there, and if not, until next time.